So there's a couple of things you guys probably already know. Now, one of those things is that Nancy Pelosi has been the target of a lot of criticism throughout the election cycle, even dating back to the Democratic primary. It started out with the ice cream thing where she's like, there's a pandemic going on and she's being recorded in front of her like $1,000 fridge that she has two of. And then she's like panning down to some pretty expensive ice cream that she has and a lot of it. Probably like $100, $200 worth of ice cream. So people went off on that because they were like, hey man, what the hell's wrong with you? The optics of this are horrible. It's a crappy thing to do during a pandemic. Then it was the whole salon disaster where she was going to a salon. She refused to take any of the blame for it. Now there's even a third one, which I'm going to cover in a separate story, which is about the House was trying to have this dinner for new House members, and they ended up scrapping it or changing it because the backlash was so strong. But there seems to be something about Pelosi where she's incredibly stubborn. She is really, really stubborn, and she comes off as an incredibly smug piece of shit. Now, the Democrats are sort of in the House. They're pretty much in chaos right now. The DCCC chair is not running for re-election. And it's because they failed. They failed. They failed to capitalize on Donald Trump. Their majority has decreased now. It has not increased. It went down. They're only projected to have a majority by like 7 to 9 seats. So they failed epically. Okay, really massive failure. All right. Now here's this article. It says, Defiant Pelosi says, I take credit for holding the House. Now, this article reads, a defiant Nancy Pelosi said Friday that she doesn't take responsibility for suffering losses in House races last week, while dismissing the notion that she would now have to compromise on her party's agenda since she will preside over a slimmer majority in the next Congress. Quote, I take credit for winning a majority and holding the House, Pelosi said when CNN asked if she took any responsibility for losing seats. So speaking to reporters at a weekly news conference, Pelosi was emboldened by the election of Joe Biden as president-elect, arguing that Democrats have far greater power to push through their agenda than its Republicans, including Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, who will be forced to heed to their party's demands after new Congress takes power in January. So this really says a lot. Now, anytime you're the leader of anything, what you're often going to find yourself doing just out of sheer leadership qualities and feeling of a sense of responsibility for things, you may even take responsibility for things, and you'll probably do this a lot. If you're a true leader, a real leader of something, you'll take responsibility for things that you may not even deserve responsibility for. Maybe it was someone else's fault, but you're like, I'm the leader, ultimately it comes down on me, I need to lead, that's what I have to do. Nancy Pelosi is supposed to be the leader of the House. She's the Speaker of the House. She's supposed to be the leader of the Democrats on the House level, right? Not only is she not taking credit for something that she is clearly responsible for, that being a really failed attempt at trying to win House seats, take real control of the House, expand your seats, or at least, preserve the amount of seats you have, not get picked off on a bunch of seats. She failed to do so. So not only is she failing to take account for something that she's clearly at least somewhat at fault for, a leader would typically take responsibility for something that they're not responsible for a lot of times. She's not even doing that. So what she's doing here, she's exhibiting zero leadership qualities, because that's leadership 101. You take blame even when it's not your blame, because you're the leader, and ultimately that's what you do, and that's what makes you a leader. You're passing the buck, although she's not passing the buck here. She's just saying, the buck's not mine, it's not me. Passing the buck is sort of blaming someone else or giving off something to someone else, saying, hey, it wasn't me. So she's kind of saying, well, the buck isn't mine, it's somewhere else. I'm not saying who exactly it is, but it's not me. So no leadership qualities whatsoever. This also demonstrates to me that, and something we know for a long time, Democrats do not value lower level seats in the House or the Senate. And this is really detrimental, because she thinks that this is amazing when you win the presidency, which it's going to help you a little bit. You can do stuff through executive power, but there's a lot of stuff you can't do, especially permanently, because executive power, as soon as a Republican is put into office, all that can be reversed. Okay? So, it doesn't really make it, whole. Like, something like the Iran deal, for example, it's done via executive power. It can be dismantled via executive power, right? So you want to get through things through legislatively. But you can't do that if you have no one in the Senate. Also, you can't really get a lot of your cabinet members you potentially want because the Senate votes on it. So it shows a lot of things. It also shows that Nancy Pelosi is clearly out of touch. She's a dinosaur. She's a piece of shit. She's incredibly narcissistic. And most importantly, she has to be replaced. I am so disgusted by the likes of Nancy Pelosi and Dianne Feinstein, pretty much all of these dinosaurs. And hopefully people start to understand it's a time for a new leadership. Even if you are a corporate Democrat, you should be getting ready to move away from Nancy Pelosi and Dianne Feinstein, okay? Now, when it comes to Nancy Pelosi, that previous thing I told you about, like the 3 things where she was getting a lot of backlash for, the first 2 things, liberals defended her completely. Although I don't really recall on the salon situation. They definitely defended her to the tooth and nail on the ice cream fridge issue. But now with this dinner thing, it was a really, really bipartisan effort to say, cancel this dinner immediately. Okay, and I'm going to be covering it in a separate piece. But basically, what that means is maybe liberals are coming around, even ones who you may think are Nancy Pelosi fans. And I think Dianne Feinstein and the shenanigans she pulled with Amy Coney Barrett, I think that might be showing Democrats, even maybe more centrist corporate ones, that, you know, maybe it's time for new leadership. Maybe it's time to go in a Hakeem Jeffries direction, right? Which, you know, for me, obviously isn't really any better. But I feel like we could replace Hakeem Jeffries. So, basically, TLDR, Nancy Pelosi, a piece of shit.